The silence in the oak room was profound as Catherine slowly lifted the lid of the ancient jewelry box. Inside, nestled in faded purple velvet, lay the most extraordinary piece of royal jewelry she had ever seen. The Oriental circlet was unlike any tiara in the royal collection, its design speaking to influences far beyond traditional European craftsmanship. Delicate gold work intertwined with precious stones and patterns that seemed to dance in the afternoon light filtering through the castle's windows. Dr. Anna Key, the director of the Royal Collection Trust, had quietly entered the room during Queen Camilla's explanation. Now she stepped forward, her expertise in royal artifacts evident in the reverent way she approached the ancient piece. "Your Royal Highness," she said softly, "what you're looking at is perhaps one of the most culturally significant pieces in the entire royal collection." The Oriental circlet was commissioned by King George IV in 1820, but its story begins much earlier than that. Catherine gently lifted the circlet from its resting place, surprised by its lightness despite the obvious craftsmanship and precious stones. The metalwork was incredibly intricate, featuring motifs that seemed to blend Eastern and Western artistic traditions in ways that shouldn't have been possible during the early 19th century. Emeralds, diamonds, and pearls were set in flowing patterns that reminded Catherine of both English garden designs and Islamic geometric art. The king commissioned this piece, Dr. Key continued, after receiving a diplomatic gift from the Ottoman Empire. The original gift was a collection of ancient jewelry pieces that had belonged to various Eastern royal families. Rather than simply adding them to the crown jewels, George IV had them melted down and redesigned into something that would represent the monarchy's connection to the wider world. Queen Camilla settled into her chair, her eyes fixed on the circlet in Catherine's hands. George IV was a fascinating monarch in many ways. He understood, perhaps better than many of his predecessors, that the British royal family existed within a global context. The Oriental circlet was his way of acknowledging that our traditions and power were enhanced, not diminished, by recognizing the wisdom and artistry of other cultures. The historical significance of what Catherine was holding began to sink in. This wasn't simply a beautiful piece of jewelry. It was a physical representation of diplomatic relationships, cultural exchange, and royal vision that spanned continents. The fact that it had remained hidden for so long suggested that its meaning had been either misunderstood or deliberately suppressed by subsequent generations of royals. Sir Clive approached with another document, this one more recent than the decree that had established the Duchess Regent title. "This is a memorandum written by Queen Victoria in 1838, he explained. She ordered the Oriental circlet to be placed in secure storage after deciding that its design was too foreign for the British royal family. She felt that wearing it in public might send the wrong message about British superiority and cultural identity." Catherine shook her head in amazement. The circlet in her hands was evidence of a more enlightened approach to royal representation, one that had been abandoned in favor of a more insular and arguably less sophisticated view of monarchy. The irony that she, as a commoner who had married into the royal family, was being offered the chance to revive this symbol of cultural openness was not lost on her. "Times have changed considerably since Victoria's era," Queen Camilla observed. "Today's royal family operates in a global environment where cultural sensitivity and international cooperation are essential. The circlet that Victoria found too foreign might be exactly what the monarchy needs to demonstrate its evolution and relevance in the modern world." Dr. Key moved to a laptop computer that had been set up on a side table. With a few keystrokes, she brought up a series of historical images showing the three previous Duchess regents wearing the Oriental circlet. The first was Princess Caroline of Brunswick, George IV's estranged wife, who had worn it to several diplomatic functions before their relationship deteriorated. The second was Queen Adelaide, who had used the circlet to great effect during state visits involving Eastern European and Asian dignitaries. The third Duchess regent, Dr. Key explained, was actually Princess Charlotte, George IV's daughter, who wore the circlet only once before her tragic death in childbirth in 1817. After her death, the title and the circlet were retired, waiting for another moment when the monarchy would need such a powerful symbol of international connection. Catherine studied the historical photographs, noting how the circlet seemed to transform each woman who wore it. There was something about its design that conveyed both authority and accessibility, strength and grace. She could imagine how it might look in modern settings, at diplomatic receptions, state dinners, and international ceremonies where the royal family needed to project both British tradition and global awareness. "The craftsmanship is extraordinary," Catherine murmured, turning the circlet to catch different angles of light. "The way the Eastern motifs blend with traditional European elements creates something entirely new. It's like a conversation between different artistic traditions." Queen Camilla smiled at Catherine's observation. That's exactly what George IV intended. He wanted to create something that honored other cultures while remaining distinctly royal. The circlet was meant to be a bridge between different worlds, a way of showing that the British monarchy could learn from and appreciate other traditions without losing its own identity. The political implications of reviving the Oriental circlet in the current global climate were significant. Britain's relationship with many of its former colonies and current Commonwealth nations had been strained by historical grievances and modern disagreements. The circlet could serve as a powerful symbol of the royal family's commitment to a more inclusive and culturally aware approach to international relations. Sir Clive pulled out yet another document, this one clearly modern and bearing the current king's seal. "His Majesty has given considerable thought to the revival of both the title and the circlet," he said. He believes that Princess Catherine's background, her approach to royal duties, and her natural ability to connect with people from diverse backgrounds make her the perfect person to reintroduce this important symbol to the world. Catherine felt the weight of expectations settling around her like a cloak. The decision to accept or decline this honor was clearly hers to make, but the implications extended far beyond personal choice. This was about the future direction of the monarchy, the role of royal women in the 21st century, and Britain's place in an increasingly connected world. "What would be expected of me as Duchess Regent?" Catherine asked, her practical nature asserting itself despite the emotional impact of the moment. "What responsibilities would come with wearing this circlet in public?" Queen Camilla and Sir Clive exchanged glances before the Queen Consort responded. "The role would involve representing the crown at specific international functions, particularly those involving diplomatic relationships with Asian, Middle Eastern, and African nations. You would also serve as a cultural ambassador, promoting understanding and cooperation between Britain and the broader international community." The scope of what the following morning brought unprecedented activity to Windsor Castle. Catherine had spent the night in the castle's guest quarters, her mind wrestling with the monumental decision that lay before her. The Oriental circlet sat on the dresser in her room, catching the early morning sunlight and seeming to pulse with centuries of unspoken history. She had called William the previous evening, and their conversation had lasted well into the night as they discussed the implications of accepting such a significant new role. William's support had been unwavering, but he had also been characteristically thoughtful about the practical considerations. "This isn't just about you, Catherine," he had said gently. "This decision affects our children, our future reign, and the direction of the monarchy for generations to come. But if anyone can handle this responsibility, it's you." By morning, Catherine had reached her decision. She found Queen Camilla and Sir Clive in the castle's breakfast room, both looking as though they had spent as restless a night as she had. The weight of history seemed to press down on all of them as Catherine took her seat at the polished table. "I've decided to accept," Catherine said simply, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was committing to. "The title, the circlet, and everything that comes with them. I believe this is an opportunity to help the monarchy evolve in ways that honor both our traditions and our responsibilities to the modern world." The relief on Queen Camilla's face was evident, though it was quickly replaced by the focused energy of someone preparing for a complex undertaking. "We'll need to move quickly," she said. "The king wants to announce your new title during the state visit from Japan next week. It would be the perfect opportunity to debut the Oriental circlet and demonstrate the symbolic significance of what we're trying to achieve." The next several days passed in a blur of preparation. The story of Catherine's new title had been kept secret from the media, but the royal household was buzzing with activity as plans were made for the announcement. The Oriental circlet was sent to the crown jewelers for cleaning and minor adjustments to ensure it fit Catherine perfectly. Historical documents were reviewed, protocol specialists consulted, and diplomatic channels quietly alerted to prepare for what would be a significant development in royal ceremony. The Japanese state visit provided the perfect backdrop for revealing Catherine's new role. Japan's own rich traditions of ceremonial culture and respect for historical continuity made it an ideal setting for demonstrating how the Oriental circlet could serve as a bridge between different royal traditions. The Japanese emperor and empress had been briefed on the historical significance of the circlet and had expressed their honor at being present for its return to public life. The state banquet at Buckingham Palace was scheduled for Thursday evening, and Catherine spent the afternoon in preparation. The royal hairdresser, the same woman who had styled Catherine's hair for her wedding, worked carefully to create a look that would complement the unique design of the Oriental circlet. Unlike traditional tiaras, the circlet sat lower on the head and required a different styling approach to showcase its intricate Eastern-influenced patterns. As Catherine looked at herself in the mirror, wearing the circlet for the first time in public preparation, she was struck by how different she looked. The piece seemed to add gravity to her presence while also highlighting her natural warmth. The cultural fusion represented in the circlet's design appeared to enhance rather than overwhelm her own identity, creating exactly the symbolic balance that King George IV had originally intended. The banquet hall at Buckingham Palace had never looked more magnificent. The table settings included pieces of historic china that complemented the Eastern themes represented in Catherine's circlet, and the floral arrangements incorporated elements that spoke to both British and Japanese aesthetic traditions. Every detail had been planned to reinforce the message of cultural cooperation and mutual respect that the evening was meant to convey. When Catherine entered the banquet hall, wearing the Oriental circlet for the first time in nearly 2 centuries, the assembled guests fell silent. The Japanese emperor, known for his deep appreciation of historical ceremony, was visibly moved by the significance of the moment. Later, he would tell his staff that witnessing the revival of such an important piece of royal regalia was one of the most meaningful experiences of his reign. The formal announcement of Catherine's new title came during the king's toast to the visiting dignitaries. "Tonight," King Charles said, his voice carrying across the hushed banquet hall, "we have the honor of reviving one of the most significant titles in British royal history. I am pleased to announce that the Princess of Wales has accepted the additional title of Duchess Regent of the Ancient Crowns, a position that recognizes her exceptional service to the crown and her unique ability to represent our nation on the global stage." The applause was immediate and sustained, but Catherine was most struck by the expression on the Japanese empress's face. The elderly woman, herself a symbol of cultural preservation and international diplomacy, smiled with what appeared to be genuine admiration and understanding. It was clear that the significance of the moment was not lost on someone who had spent her own life navigating the delicate balance between tradition and progress. The media reaction to Catherine's new title and the debut of the Oriental circlet was swift and overwhelming. Royal correspondents who had covered the family for decades admitted they had never heard of the Duchess Regent title, leading to intensive research into historical records and archives. The story dominated international news cycles for days, with particular interest from nations whose own royal traditions had influenced the circlet's original design. Fashion and jewelry experts were fascinated by the Oriental circlet itself. The piece was analyzed from every angle, with historians and gemologists offering insights into its construction, cultural influences, and symbolic significance. Several museum curators noted that the circlet represented one of the earliest examples of intentional cultural fusion in European royal regalia, making it a significant artifact beyond its obvious beauty and value. The political implications of Catherine's new role began to manifest almost immediately. Diplomatic channels from several Asian and Middle Eastern nations expressed interest in hosting visits from the new Duchess Regent, seeing her role as an opportunity to strengthen cultural and economic ties with Britain. The symbolism of the Oriental circlet had clearly resonated with nations that had often felt overlooked by traditional European royal protocol. International fashion magazines declared Catherine's debut of the Oriental Circlet to be one of the most significant royal jewelry moments in modern history. The piece was photographed from every conceivable angle and compared to other historic royal jewels, with many experts noting that its cultural significance far exceeded its monetary value. The fact that it had been hidden away for nearly 2 centuries only added to its mystique and impact. Within the Commonwealth, reaction to Catherine's new title was largely positive. Many nations saw the revival of the Duchess Regent role as evidence that the modern monarchy was committed to recognizing and honoring the diverse cultural heritage of the Commonwealth nations. The Oriental Circlet became a symbol of this more inclusive approach to royal representation. The royal family's social media accounts, normally conservative in their approach to sharing royal moments, made an exception for the Oriental Circlet debut. The official photographs of Catherine wearing the historic piece generated millions of interactions within hours, making it one of the most popular royal social media posts in history. Young people, in particular, seemed drawn to the story of the circlet's multicultural origins and Catherine's role in bringing it back to public attention. Several months after the announcement, Catherine reflected on how the decision to accept the Duchess Regent title had changed her role within the royal family. The position had opened doors to diplomatic opportunities she had never imagined, and the Oriental Circlet had become a powerful tool for cultural engagement. She had worn it during visits to India, Morocco, and Singapore, each time adjusting the central stone to honor the host nation's cultural preferences. The success of Catherine's new role had also influenced broader discussions about the future of the monarchy. Her ability to use the historical significance of the Oriental Circlet to build bridges with diverse communities had demonstrated the potential for royal traditions to evolve without losing their essential meaning. The title of Duchess Regent, dormant for nearly 2 centuries, had found new relevance in a world that increasingly valued cultural understanding and international cooperation. Looking back on that transformative day at Windsor Castle, Catherine realized that accepting the Oriental Circlet had been about more than taking on a new title or wearing a beautiful piece of jewelry. It had been about embracing the opportunity to help shape how the royal family engaged with the wider world, using the weight of history to build a more inclusive and culturally aware future for the monarchy. This being offered was breathtaking. Catherine had always been drawn to international causes and had shown a natural aptitude for diplomatic work during her royal tours. The chance to formalize that role and to wear a piece of jewelry that symbolized cultural bridge building felt like a natural evolution of her royal identity. Dr. Key moved closer, her scholarly enthusiasm evident. "The circlet has another unique feature," she said. "The central stone can be changed depending on the occasion. Currently, it holds a large diamond, but historical records show that it has also held emeralds, sapphires, and even a rare star ruby. Each stone was chosen to honor the particular culture or nation being celebrated." Catherine examined the setting more closely and could see the sophisticated mechanism that would allow for such changes. It was ingenious design work that spoke to the original creator's understanding that diplomacy often required subtle symbolic gestures. The ability to customize the circlet for different occasions would make it an even more powerful tool for international engagement. The afternoon sun was beginning to fade as Catherine continued to study the Oriental Circlet. She realized that her decision about accepting the Duchess Regent title would need to be made soon, but she also understood that this choice would fundamentally alter her role within the royal family. The circlet represented not just honor and responsibility, but also the chance to help reshape how the monarchy engaged with the wider world. A morning mist hung low over Windsor Castle as the Black Range Rover made its way through the ancient gates. It was a Tuesday in late October, and the autumn leaves painted the castle grounds in shades of gold and crimson. Inside the vehicle sat Princess Catherine, her hands folded carefully in her lap, fingers unconsciously touching the small jewelry box beside her. She had received the call from Queen Camilla just 3 days earlier, a conversation that would change everything she thought she knew about her role within the royal family. Catherine had always been meticulous about her royal duties, but this particular summons felt different. The Queen Consort's voice had carried an unusual weight, speaking in hushed tones about ancient protocols and unveiling something that has remained hidden for far too long. As the Princess of Wales gazed out at the familiar towers of Windsor Castle, she couldn't shake the feeling that this day would mark a turning point in her royal journey. The castle staff seemed unusually busy as Catherine's car pulled up to the entrance. Footmen moved with purpose, and she noticed several faces she didn't recognize among the usual household members. These newcomers wore the distinctive uniforms of the Royal Collection Trust, the organization responsible for managing the crown's most precious artifacts. Their presence at Windsor on this particular morning was no coincidence. As Catherine stepped from the vehicle, her personal protection officer whispered something into his radio. The message was brief, but significant. The princess has arrived. Inform Her Majesty we are ready to proceed. The formality of it all made Catherine's pulse quicken slightly. After more than a decade as a working member of the royal family, she had grown accustomed to ceremony and protocol, but something about today felt monumentally important. Lady Susan Hussey, one of the Queen's longest-serving ladies-in-waiting, appeared at the castle's main entrance. Her warm smile did little to mask the gravity of the occasion. "Your Royal Highness," she said with a deep curtsy, "Her Majesty is waiting for you in the Oak Room. There are some rather important matters to discuss before we proceed to the presentation ceremony." The Oak Room, with its dark wood paneling and portraits of long-dead monarchs, had always been one of Catherine's favorite spaces at Windsor. Today, however, it felt different. Queen Camilla stood by the massive fireplace, her expression thoughtful and somewhat mysterious. Beside her was Sir Clive Alderton, the private secretary to the king, holding what appeared to be an ancient leather-bound document. "Catherine, my dear," Queen Camilla began, her voice carrying the weight of centuries of royal tradition, "what I'm about to share with you has been known only to a select few within the royal household. It concerns a title that has remained dormant for nearly 2 centuries, waiting for the right moment and the right person to be revived." Catherine took her seat in one of the room's high-backed chairs, her mind racing with possibilities. She had studied royal history extensively since her engagement to William, but there were always secrets within the monarchy that remained hidden from public knowledge. The look in Queen Camilla's eyes suggested that she was about to become privy to one of these closely guarded mysteries. Sir Clive stepped forward, carefully opening the ancient document. The parchment was yellowed with age, and Catherine could see the royal seal pressed into the bottom of the page. "This," he said solemnly, "is a decree written by King George IV in 1821. It establishes a unique title within the royal family, one that was created specifically for the wife of the heir presumptive during times of particular significance to the crown." The words hung in the air as Catherine tried to process their meaning. She was already the Princess of Wales, a title steeped in tradition and honor. What could possibly be more significant than that? Queen Camilla seemed to read her thoughts and moved closer, her expression growing more serious. "The title," Queen Camilla continued, "is that of Duchess Regent of the Ancient Crowns. It's a position that has only been held by 3 women in British history, and each time it was during moments of great transition for the monarchy. The last woman to hold this title was Queen Adelaide, wife of King William IV, and that was over 190 years ago." Catherine felt her breath catch in her throat. A regent duchess title was something beyond her wildest imagination. Such positions typically carried enormous responsibility and were reserved for only the most extraordinary circumstances. She looked between Queen Camilla and Sir Clive, searching their faces for clues about what this might mean for her future. "But why now?" Catherine asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "What makes this moment significant enough to revive such an ancient title?" Queen Camilla exchanged a meaningful glance with Sir Clive before returning her attention to Catherine. "The monarchy is entering a new era, my dear. With Charles as king and William as heir, we're seeing changes that haven't occurred in over 70 years. The royal family needs strong, capable women who can help guide these transitions. Your work over the past decade, your dedication to your duties, and, most importantly, your ability to connect with people from all walks of life have not gone unnoticed." The implications of what Queen Camilla was saying began to sink in. This wasn't just about a ceremonial title or an honor for past service. This was about positioning Catherine for a future role that would require her to take on responsibilities unlike anything she had previously undertaken. The weight of royal history seemed to press down upon her shoulders as she contemplated what acceptance of such a title might mean. Sir Clive cleared his throat gently, drawing Catherine's attention back to the ancient document in his hands. The title comes with certain privileges and responsibilities, Your Royal Highness. As Duchess Regent of the Ancient Crowns, you would have access to royal artifacts and treasures that have been sealed away for generations. You would also serve as a special advisor to the king on matters relating to the preservation and continuation of royal traditions. Catherine's mind immediately went to the jewelry box that had accompanied her to Windsor. Earlier that morning, she had received it from a courier with instructions to bring it to the castle, but not to open it until specifically directed. Now she began to understand that the box likely contained something connected to this mysterious new title. "There's something else," Queen Camilla said, noticing Catherine's glance toward the small box. "The title comes with its own coronet, a piece that hasn't been worn in public for nearly 2 centuries. It's called the Oriental Circlet, and it carries with it a fascinating history that connects our royal family to traditions far beyond Britain's shores." The Oriental Circlet. Catherine had heard whispers of such a piece among the royal jewelry collection, but she had always assumed it was simply another of the many tiaras and coronets that rarely saw the light of day. To learn that it was connected to an active title, and that she was being considered to wear it, felt almost surreal. Queen Camilla gestured toward the jewelry box. "Would you like to see it, my dear? I think it's time you understood the full scope of what we're offering you today." Catherine's hands trembled slightly as she reached for the box. The weight of history, responsibility, and opportunity all seemed to converge in this single moment. As she prepared to lift the lid, she realized that whatever lay inside would forever change her understanding of her role within the royal family. The mystery that had brought her to Windsor Castle this morning was about to be unveiled, and with it, a future she had never imagined possible.